Some people live in the real world. They see a wall and they say, "That is a wall." But I have always been different. When I see a grey wall, I see a canvas full of colours. When I see an empty lot full of trash, I see a garden full of flowers. People told me I had my head in the clouds. They called me Catarina the Dreamer. They meant it as an insult, but I learned that reality is just clay, and a dream is the hands that shape it. I would like to ask you, do you have a dream that everyone says is impossible? Please share it in the comments. My name is Catarina, and I decided to build a paradise in a wasteland. I lived in a city made of concrete. Everything was grey. The sky was grey from the factory smoke. The buildings were grey. The faces of the people on the bus were grey and tired. I worked as a cleaner in a large office building. Every day I mopped the floors. Swish, swish. But in my head, I wasn't mopping floors. I was painting. I carried a small sketchbook in my pocket. During my lunch break, I sat on the roof. I didn't look at the traffic. I drew. I drew trees growing out of the pavement. I drew vines climbing the skyscrapers. I drew a city that breathed. "Hey, dreamer!" My coworker Bruno would laugh. "Stop drawing. You can't plant a tree on concrete. Come back to reality." "Reality is boring, Bruno," I would say. "Reality pays the bills," he replied. One day, walking home, I took a shortcut through an abandoned alley. It was a terrible place. It was filled with old tires, broken glass, and plastic bags. The smell was awful. A rusty fence surrounded it, with a sign that said, "Keep out." Most people walked past it quickly, holding their breath. But I stopped. I looked through the holes in the fence. I didn't see the trash. In my mind, the tires were gone. I saw a pond with fish. I saw a bench under a cherry blossom tree. I saw children playing. It was so real in my mind that I could almost smell the flowers. My heart started to beat fast. I felt a pull, like a magnet. Why not? I thought. Why does it have to be trash? I climbed through a hole in the fence. I stood in the middle of the garbage. A rat ran past my foot. "This is mine," I whispered. I didn't have money. I didn't have land. I didn't have permission. I just had a pair of gloves and a vision. I started that weekend. I woke up at 5 a.m. I went to the alley with heavy trash bags. I started to clean. It was hard work. The trash was heavy. The glass cut my gloves. The smell made me dizzy. People walked by and stared at me. "Crazy lady!" a teenager shouted. "You are cleaning a dump. It will always be a dump." "Go home, Catarina," an old woman said. "You are wasting your time." But I didn't listen. I was in the zone between dream and reality. My body was in the trash, but my eyes were on the garden. For 3 months, I cleaned. I cleared the ground. It was just bare, hard dirt now. It was ugly. But to me, it was a blank canvas. Then, the real problem started. I needed soil. I needed seeds. And I had no money. I stood in the middle of my clean, empty dirt patch. And for the first time, the dream flickered. Reality was hitting me hard. How do you build a garden with empty pockets? I sat down on an old tire I hadn't moved yet. I put my head in my hands. Maybe Bruno was right, I whispered. Then, I felt a drop of rain. And then another. The rain fell on my face. At first, I felt defeated. But then, I looked at the mud forming around my boots. I looked at the old tire I was sitting on. And suddenly, the dreamer woke up again. I stood up. "I don't need money," I said to the rain. "I need imagination." I looked at the tire. It wasn't garbage. It was a container. If I painted it, it could be a beautiful pot for flowers. I looked at the broken wooden pallets near the fence. They weren't trash. They were wood for a bench. I realized that the city was full of things people threw away, things that still had life in them. That evening, I didn't go home to sleep. I went to the vegetable market. The sellers were packing up. They were throwing away bruised apples, brown bananas, and wilted lettuce. "Excuse me," I asked a man selling tomatoes. "Can I have your trash?" He looked at me like I was crazy. "The rotten food? Why?" "To feed the earth," I said. He laughed, but he gave me 3 boxes of organic waste. I carried them to the alley. I mixed the rotten food with the hard dirt. I made compost. I was cooking a meal for the ground. For the next month, I became a scavenger. I found half cans of paint in dumpsters. I found cracked cups. I painted the tires bright blue, yellow, and red. I arranged them in a circle. They looked like a necklace on the grey ground. But I still had no plants. Just colourful tires filled with dirt. One afternoon, a little boy walked past the fence. He stopped and looked through the hole. He was about 6 years old. He was holding a small dry sunflower. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I am building a magic garden," I said. He looked at the empty dirt. "It doesn't look like magic. It looks like tires." "You have to wait," I smiled. "Magic takes time." The boy looked at his dry sunflower. He reached through the fence. "My mom threw this away," he said. "It has seeds. Can you use them?" I took the dead flower. It was the most beautiful gift I had ever received. "Yes," I said. "This is perfect. What is your name?" "Matteo," he said. "Well, Matteo," I said, "you are the first gardener." We planted the sunflower seeds together. The next day, Matteo brought his friend, Lucas. Lucas brought a seed from a lemon. The day after that, a woman from the bakery brought me a bag of old flour sacks to use as fabric for cushions. Slowly, the neighborhood started to wake up. They saw the crazy lady painting tires, and they stopped laughing. They started helping. Catarina, the old woman who told me to go home, said she was holding a small green plant. "My cat knocked this over. It is dying. Maybe you can save it." "I will try," I promised. I planted it in a blue tire. I watered it with rain I collected in buckets. I sang to it. And then, the miracle happened. Green shoots appeared in the tires. The sunflower grew tall. The dying plant produced a tiny purple flower. The grey alley was suddenly speckled with green. It wasn't a forest. It was small, but it was alive. I sat on my handmade bench made of old pallets. I watched a butterfly land on a flower. A real butterfly, in the middle of the concrete city. I felt a joy so big it hurt my chest. "I did it," I whispered. "The dream is real." But dreams are fragile. One morning, I arrived at the garden. A black car was parked in front of the gate. A man in a grey suit was standing there. He was holding a clipboard. He was looking at my colourful tires with a frown. He saw me. "Are you the one responsible for this mess?" he asked coldly. "It is not a mess," I said, standing tall. "It is a community garden." "It is private property," the man said. "I represent the construction company. We own this land. We are building a parking lot here next week." He pointed to the gate. "You have 24 hours to remove this garbage, or we will bulldoze it all." My heart stopped. A parking lot. They wanted to kill the garden to put cars on it? "Please," I begged. "Look at the flowers. The children play here. The neighbors love it." "I don't care about flowers," the man said. He checked his watch. 24 hours. Tomorrow at noon, the machines come." He got in his car and drove away. I stood in the middle of my paradise. I looked at Matteo's sunflower, which was just opening its face to the sun. I looked at the bench I had built with my own hands. Reality had returned, and reality was a bulldozer. I sat on the bench and cried. I cried for the wasted effort. I cried for the little purple flower that would be crushed under concrete. Then, I felt a small hand on my shoulder. I looked up. It was Matteo. Behind him was his mother, and behind her was the old woman and the tomato seller. "Why are you crying, dreamer?" the tomato seller asked. "They are coming tomorrow," I sobbed. "They are going to destroy it all." Matteo's mother looked at the man in the suit's tire tracks. She looked at the garden. Then she looked at me. "They can destroy a fence," she said fiercely, "but they cannot destroy us. We have 24 hours. Good, that is a lot of time." "What can we do?" I asked. "They have machines." "We have people," she said. "Catarina, you started this dream alone, but you are not alone anymore." We didn't go home. We didn't sleep. That night, the alley became the busiest place in the city. Matteo's mother, Elena, made phone calls. "Bring everyone," she said. "Bring lights. Bring music. Bring life." The word spread. People I didn't even know came to the gate. They brought candles. They brought guitars. They brought pots of flowers from their balconies. The baker brought fresh bread. The teacher brought her students to paint signs. We worked through the darkness. We didn't just clean the garden, we decorated it. We hung fairy lights from the rusty fence. We painted a mural on the gray wall that said, "This is not dirt, this is our heart." By sunrise, the garden didn't look like a collection of trash and tires. It looked like a festival. It glowed with light and color. It smelled of coffee and damp earth. At 11:30 a.m., the music stopped. The birds stopped singing. We heard a low rumbling sound in the distance. Rumble. The ground shook. "They are here," I whispered. 2 giant yellow bulldozers turned the corner. They looked like angry metal dinosaurs. Behind them was the black car. The man in the gray suit got out. He stopped. He looked at the crowd. There were 50 of us standing inside the garden. Old people, young people, cats, dogs. We stood shoulder to shoulder. We formed a human wall in front of the flowers. The man in the suit marched up to the gate. His face was red. "What is this?" he shouted. "This is illegal. Move! Get out of the way!" No one moved. "We are having a picnic," the tomato seller said calmly, eating an apple. "I have a permit." The man waved his paper. "I have the right to clear this land." He turned to the driver of the first bulldozer. "Move it forward. Scare them." The driver revved the engine. The noise was deafening. The giant metal shovel lifted into the air. The machine moved forward slowly. Clank, clank. My legs were shaking. I wanted to run. I looked at Matteo. He was holding his mother's hand, looking at the giant wheel of the machine. He looked terrified. I couldn't let them get hurt. I stepped out of the line. I walked forward. I stood alone in the space between the human wall and the metal monster. "Stop!" I screamed. The driver didn't stop. The machine kept coming. 5 meters. 4 meters. "Catarina!" the neighbors screamed. I closed my eyes. I thought about the first day I saw the alley. I thought about the grey world. I will not let the grey win, I thought. Then, suddenly the noise stopped. The engine cut out. The silence was loud. I opened my eyes. The bulldozer had stopped 2 meters from my feet. The door of the machine opened. The driver jumped down. He was a big man with dirty hands and a hard hat. He walked over to the man in the suit. "I can't do it, boss," the driver said. "What?" the suit man screamed. "Do your job. Crush it." The driver shook his head. He pointed at me. Then he pointed at the garden. He pointed at the little blue tire with the purple flower. "My grandmother lives on this street," the driver said. "She told me about this place. She said it's the only pretty thing in the neighborhood. I drive machines, boss. I destroy concrete. I don't destroy miracles." The driver took off his helmet. "Fire me if you want. But I am not driving over that lady." The man in the suit looked like he was going to explode. He threw his clipboard on the ground. "Fine," he yelled. "I will call the police. I will call the owner of the company. You will all be in jail by tonight." He pulled out his phone. He started dialing with angry fingers. The neighbors gasped. The police. Jail. We were just ordinary people. We couldn't fight the law. I looked at Elena. She looked worried. The victory with the driver was small. The war was not over. But then, a blue car pulled up behind the bulldozers. It wasn't a police car. It was a news van. A woman with a microphone jumped out. A cameraman followed her. "Is this the Magic Garden?" the reporter asked, running towards us. "We got a call from a little boy named Matteo. He said there was a standoff." The man in the suit froze. He lowered his phone. He looked at the camera. He looked at the angry neighbors. He looked at the beautiful garden. And he realized something very important. The world was watching. The reporter pointed the microphone at me. The red light on the camera turned on. "Live? Tell us," the reporter said. "Why are you standing in front of a bulldozer for a patch of dirt?" I looked at the camera lens. I was dirty. My hair was messy. I was just a cleaner, but I felt like a giant. "It is not dirt," I said, my voice clear and strong. "Look around. This is a community. We live in a grey city. We work hard. We are tired. This garden, this is the only place where we can breathe. If you destroy this, you don't destroy a parking lot. You destroy our hope." I pointed to Matteo, who was holding his sunflower. "This boy planted that flower. Do you want to be the person who crushes it?" The cameraman zoomed in on Matteo's scared face. The man in the grey suit realized he had lost. If he bulldozed the garden now, he would be the most hated man in the city. He would be the villain on the evening news. He forced a fake smile. He waved at the camera. "There is a misunderstanding," he lied nervously. "We are just doing a survey. Of course we care about the community. We will, review the plans." He signaled to the bulldozer driver to reverse. The engines roared, but this time they moved backward. The neighbors cheered. It was a sound louder than the machines. That night, the story was on the news. The Battle of the Alley. They showed the flowers. They showed the mural. They showed the people holding hands. The city fell in love with us. The phone at the construction company rang all night. Thousands of people called. "Don't touch the garden," they shouted. "Save the flowers." 2 days later, a black car came back to the alley. I was watering the plants, terrified it was the police, but it wasn't the police. It was an older woman. She was dressed elegantly. She walked into the garden and sat on my handmade bench. "Are you Catarina?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I own the construction company," she said. "My manager told me this land was just a garbage dump. He wanted to build a parking lot for our trucks." She looked at the blue tires. She looked at the tomato plants growing tall. "He was wrong," she said. "This is not a dump. This is beautiful." She pulled a piece of paper from her bag. "I cannot give you the land, Catarina. Business is business. But I can lease it to the city for $1 a year. For the next 99 years. She signed the paper and handed it to me. "It is a park now. Officially. No parking lot. No bulldozers." I took the paper. My hands shook. I looked at the woman. "Thank you," I whispered. "No," she smiled. "Thank you for reminding me that cities need lungs." That was 7 years ago. If you come to the alley today, you won't see trash. You won't see a fence. You will see a green archway that says, "Catarina's Garden." I don't mop floors in the office building anymore. The city hired me. I am the official head gardener of this park. I get paid to dream. The garden is big now. We have real trees. We have a small fountain. We have benches where old people play chess and young people fall in love. Mateo is a teenager now. He is taller than me. He comes every Saturday to help me weed the flower beds. He wants to study botany at the university. Bruno, my old co-worker, who told me to get back to reality, comes here for his lunch break. He sits under the cherry blossom tree. You were right, dreamer, he told me yesterday. The concrete was boring. My name is Catarina. People used to say I had my head in the clouds. They said my dream was impossible. But I learned that reality is just concrete. And a dream is like a root. Concrete is hard, but if a root is strong enough, and if you water it with enough tears and sweat, it will crack the stone. Don't let anyone tell you your garden is just dirt. Plant your seeds, defend your flowers, and never ever let the grey win. If this story about vision, community, and the power of nature inspired you, please give this video a like. Do you have a project or a dream that needs patience to grow? Share your story in the comments below. For more uplifting English stories about changing the world, please be sure to follow our channel.